The Court of Appeal stated clearly and ordered that status quo ante bellum must be maintained.
Which is a problem. You took sides because it was not for you or INEC to interpret what status quo ante bellum means. That you should have gone to the Court of Appeal to seek an interpretation instead of imposing an interpretation.
Instead of returning to the court for a clear, unambiguous ruling, Nigeria's electoral umpire, the Independent National Electoral Commission, led by Joash Amupitan, took matters into its own hands. They read the court's order, studied its language, and simply decided what it meant. No fresh hearing, no judicial clarification, just their own interpretation, handed down as final. In any healthy democracy, power is deliberately split into clean, jealous compartments. The court interprets the law with final authority, INEC executes it. That separation is the guardrail. But the instant an institution like INEC begins interpreting a court order on its own without going back for confirmation, it quietly steps over that guardrail. It doesn't make a loud noise. It doesn't announce a coup. It just crosses the line, and most citizens don't even hear the footsteps until the line is already far behind them. Think about it through the cold lens of game theory. This is what experts call strategic ambiguity exploitation. When a rule or an order is even slightly unclear, the smartest player in the system doesn't hesitate or seek permission. They move first. Why? Because the player who acts first changes the entire board. Everyone else is suddenly forced to react to the new reality the first mover created. So instead of asking the honest question, what did the court actually intend? The system asks a much more dangerous one. What interpretation gives us the biggest advantage right now? And here is where the story turns darker. This wasn't just one isolated decision. It planted a precedent, a silent, invisible new rule that whispers to every institution in the future. When the order is unclear, power gets to decide what it means, not the court, not the strict letter of the law. Power itself becomes the interpreter. Once that door swings open, everything changes. Every future court order becomes negotiable. Every judgment turns into a suggestion rather than a binding command. Institutions stop being servants of the law and start becoming its editors. And the law itself? It stops being a fixed shield for citizens and becomes something flexible, bendable, stretchable, moldable, not flexible for ordinary people, of course. Only for those who have learned how to play the game at the highest level. In this situation, the biggest beneficiary is the All Progressives Congress, not necessarily because they acted directly, but because the structure of the situation naturally tilts in their favor. When the Court of Appeal of Nigeria ordered a return to status quo ante bellum, the expectation was simple: restore things exactly as they were, and if there was any ambiguity, return to the court for clarification. But instead, the Independent National Electoral Commission chose to interpret that directive on its own. That single decision changes the entire dynamic of the game. Because in any system where rules are not strictly enforced but instead interpreted in real time, the advantage automatically shifts to the dominant player. And in this case, that dominant player is APC. APC already operates from a position of strength. It is the ruling party. It understands the institutional landscape better than its competitors. It has experience navigating complex political and legal environments. So when uncertainty is introduced into the system, APC is better equipped to survive and even benefit from that uncertainty. Meanwhile, the African Democratic Congress, as a challenger, depends heavily on clarity, fairness, and strict adherence to rules. Once those rules become flexible, ADC is forced into a reactive position. Instead of focusing on political strategy or mobilization, ADC now has to spend time and resources challenging interpretations, going back to court, and trying to restore clarity. That delay is not neutral, it weakens them. Momentum is lost, energy is drained, opportunities shrink. At the same time, APC doesn't need to take any aggressive action. The system itself begins to work in its favor. This is what makes the advantage so powerful. It is indirect. APC benefits without needing to be visibly involved. There is also the issue of timing. By acting quickly on its own interpretation, INEC creates a new reality on the ground. And in politics, once a new reality is established, reversing it becomes difficult. The burden shifts to the opposition to prove why that reality should change. That process takes time, and time, in politics, often favors those already in power. Even more important is the long-term effect. When an institution begins to interpret court orders instead of strictly following or seeking clarification, it creates a precedent. That precedent introduces flexibility into future decisions. And flexibility in political systems rarely benefits outsiders. It benefits those who already understand and operate within the system at the highest level. So, APC's advantage here is not about a single decision or event. It is about the environment that decision creates. An environment where rules are less rigid, interpretation becomes power, and uncertainty becomes a tool. In that kind of environment, the strongest player doesn't just compete better, they become harder to challenge.